Hi, I'm Aarti Subramaniam.
And I'm Tanvi Shukla, and we are back with Off the Record. And this time we're going to be talking about the bail order for Disha Ravi.
It's a case, of course, that has generated so much of controversy. There are very strong views on both sides. And what we're trying to do is we want to go through some important parts of this bail order, what the judge has said. Of course, the caveat here being that this is just a preliminary, this is a bail order. This is not the final word in this case by any stretch of the imagination. But because there are some significant parts of this judgment which deal with the Delhi police's investigation in many ways, we wanted to take all of you through some parts of that.
So essentially, while giving bail to Disha Ravi, largely said that the evidence is sketchy and scanty, and there is no direct link between Disha Ravi and the violence that unfolded on Republic Day. But there are largely three aspects that the order refers to. These are the three arguments that were made by Delhi police on Disha Ravi's links with secessionist forces, on Disha Ravi's use of Toolkit and that itself being a problematic issue, and of course on her conduct, which they claim shows that she wanted to hide something, which means that there was some kind of a sinister design. So let's start off with the first one, Aarti.
Which is, of course, engaging with secessionist forces. Now, this argument stems from the fact that Disha Ravi was part of a Zoom call in which there were members of the Poetic Justice Foundation, members of that, including Amod Haliwal, were part of, and these people were conspiring, or these people are known anti-India agents, so to speak, and she was part of this Zoom meeting where the toolkit was discussed, where Republic Day and the mobilization was discussed. Here's what the judge had to say about that. And I quote, "There is nothing on record to establish any direct link between the accused, that is Disha Ravi in this case, and Mod Haliwal and Ankita Lal. Still further, there is nothing on record to suggest that there was any call, incitement, instigation, or extortion on part of the accused and the above said organizations and its associates to foment violence on 26 January. In my considered opinion, it is not mere engagement with persons of dubious credentials which is indictable. Rather, it is the purpose of the engagement which is relevant for the purpose of deciding culpability. Any person with dubious credentials may interact with a number of persons during the course of his social intercourse. As long as the engagement and interaction remains within the four corners of the law, people interacting with such persons, ignorantly, innocently, or for that matter, even fully conscious of their dubious credentials, cannot be painted with the same hue. In the absence of any evidence to the effect that Disha Ravi agreed or shared a common purpose to cause violence on Republic Day with the founders of the PJF, it cannot be presumed by resorting to surmises or conjectures that she supported the secessionist tendencies." I think that particular Zoom call has been such a critical part of the investigation, has been such a critical part of the case against Disha Ravi. But just the court said, merely sharing a platform with somebody, merely meeting somebody or interacting with somebody who has a certain ideological bent or a certain agenda is not a crime in itself.
So effectively, I mean, if Aarti was a thief, or was plotting a violent, incident against the government, just because I'm sitting here and I'm together on this show doesn't mean that I am part of that conspiracy. That is a challenge, and that is what the Delhi police will have to prove that I believe and I have the same thoughts, and I'm working towards the same conspiracy or the same kind of ideology and events and violence that Aarti really wants to do. So that effectively is the part about rejecting her link to any secessionist force, whether it seeks for justice, which is a banned organization, or the Poetic Foundation, Justice Foundation, where as well that has completely been ruled out by the judge. Now, the second part is about the use of the
just for the record, I'm not a criminal of any kind, and I have no plans to try any anti-conspiracy, anti-government conspiracy, or any conspiracy of any nature. I just feel I need to say this at this point.
That being said, as a disclaimer, very much required.
Very much required, yes.
Let's move on to the second argument, Aarti, and that's about the toolkit and the fact that she created this toolkit, which had a plan to call for protests, which did call for protests, which did give people links to go and look into, various aspects of the farm laws, which also said that you should tag so-and-so, tag this person, tag that person, get together more people. That, according to Delhi police, was a large problematic thing.
Yeah, I know. We have also, in an earlier edition of Off the Record, we have discussed this toolkit. The toolkit is something which is almost like a manual on how to go about social media mobilization. It's something that is used to mobilize support for products, for causes. It's something that is done across the world. It's I think an accepted a form of communication in many ways now. The toolkit has become again such a controversial word in today's times because of this tweet that Greta Thunberg put out. She accidentally put out a toolkit which was embarrassing in many ways. Then went back, put out another one. So here's what the judge has to say about the toolkit. The perusal of the said toolkit reveals that any call for any kind of violence is conspicuously absent. In my considered opinion, citizens are conscience keepers of the government in any democratic nation. They cannot be put behind bars simply because they choose to disagree with the state policies. Now, remember also the toolkit had certain links, hyperlinks to websites, one of which was something called genocide.org.
Yeah.
The judge even goes into that part, says, I have seen some of these hyperlinks. While it was offensive, it was certainly something which was untrue. He also says the imputations may be false, exaggerated, or even with a mischievous intent. But the same cannot be stigmatized being seditious unless they have a tendency to foment violence. I concur with the ASG without commenting upon the sanctity of the information that the imputations, that is what was on this particular hyperlink,
the genocide.org.
Correct, are really objectionable in the said website. However, even if they are found to be objectionable, I cannot but disagree that the said material is seditious in nature. So, yes, the toolkit did have hyperlinks to some sites which seem to indicate that there was some sort of mass genocide going on of farmers. And however untrue that might be,
it's
that
not
is not
sedition.
I think that's
not sedition. Yeah. So, because the case I remember, and the main charge against Disha Ravi is about sedition, and the judge says nowhere in this document, in the toolkit, or the links which are embedded in the toolkit, do I see any call for violence? Do I see any call for action against the sovereignty of a nation? Which is why it's not seditious. It may be anything else, malicious. It may be mischievous, is the word they use. The other part, and I just want to highlight that, Aarti, is the and which is actually being used everywhere and it's got viral, is this quote where the order says the offense of sedition cannot be invoked to minister the wounded vanity of the government.
Correct.
Now, while this is in the order, it is important to also highlight he is quoting, Judge Dharmendra Rana is quoting a verdict from 1943. It's a pre-independence verdict in a case which was actually against the then emperor, the then king, the British king who was actually ruling our country. And he's actually quoted something about sedition from that judgment, which is important because sedition is as a law, which is part of our constitution now, was actually brought in by Britishers and was used to quell dissent in a colonial era.
And it's still being used.
And is still being used. So that's actually a very big controversial point because it's a law which was meant to be used by Britishers against the Indians in that colonial era. And many argue that there is no space for this law today in this era.
That is true. Now, the third aspect of this judgment is also the conduct of Disha Ravi. Now, as I said earlier, there is a Zoom call which has come under a lot of scrutiny. There's also a WhatsApp group which became the point of discussion, that she created this WhatsApp group where they discussed the toolkit, they discussed the farmers' laws, and then after that, after the violence, she deleted that particular WhatsApp group. Now, here's what the judge has to say. In my considered opinion, creation of a WhatsApp group or being editor of an innocuous toolkit is not an offense. Further, since the link with the said toolkit or the PJF has not been found to be objectionable, mere deletion of the WhatsApp chat to destroy the evidence linking her with the toolkit and the PJF also becomes meaningless. So that had also become a focus of discussion, that she was covering her tracks. She did not want to be, seen to be associated with these people. And in light of all of that, the court has finally ruled that, and I quote, considering the scanty and sketchy evidence available on record, I do not find any palpable reasons to breach the general rule of bail against a 22-year-old young lady with absolutely blemish-free criminal antecedents and having firm roots in the society, and send her to jail. Interestingly, Tanvi, and I know you're smiling because the judge also refers to her as a 22-year-old lady.
Yes.
And I know that's become, again, a point of a lot of debate and discussion. Does age have any relevance in criminality? No, of course it doesn't, right? You can be a criminal at the age of 22. You can be a criminal at the age of 52. The law doesn't really recognize as long as you're, of course, an adult. But having said that, the fact that she has no real criminal antecedents, she's not somebody who is, notorious. She's not somebody who's found, for example, fomenting violence directly or with a gun in her hand, has gone in her favor to say that bail is the rule.
Absolutely, and because you were referring to all the conversation that has also happened, Aarti, about the fact that she deleted these groups or chats, and why did she delete them if she didn't? And that was actually also the judge and the court has responded to it, because that was an argument made in the court by the Delhi police, and they said that we believe there is something sinister that she wants to hide, which is why she deleted all this. To which the court has said a very interesting thing, and we had highlighted it earlier as well, is that, well, it seems nothing more than her attempt to avoid any unnecessary controversies, her anxiety actually to avoid any unnecessary controversies. Disha Ravi and the group that she's a co-founder of, Fridays for Future, did get booked under UAPA a year ago by the same Delhi police. Now that charge was withdrawn. This was during when they were campaigning against the EIA draft. But they have seen that how you can fall into these controversies with no intention of obviously launching a terror conspiracy against the country. But that has happened. So the judge seems to say that, well, it just looks like she was anxious. She didn't want to get into any kind of controversy, and that's why she deleted it. So
correct. This is a definite setback to the Delhi police. I think it must be said here, given the fact that many of the arguments that the Delhi police have been putting forward have been dealt with rather substantially in this judgment, and now taking the case forward, they're going to have quite an uphill battle to prove that there is a legitimate case against the creation of a toolkit or a creation of a WhatsApp group in some sort of grand conspiracy against the state.
Yeah, so this is just the bail order. This is not the trial. The challenge still remains, like Aarti said, for the Delhi police to prove their charges. Also, this is still a sessions court, an additional judge in the sessions court who's given, if the Delhi police really wants to fight for custody, they always have the option of going to a higher up court. So we'll find out what happens next, but that's about it from us today on the Off the Record.